Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to 2C TV, your global news channel. I'm Maya 2C and this is your latest news update coming from England again for the second time today. We have a news update in regards to the national security threat to ordinary people up and down this kingdom. Unfortunately, earlier on we reported on what happened last night in terms of the train attack around Cambridgeshire. We also have another attack story to mention, which is actually this time is from Kent in Faversham. The mainstream media have not been reporting on any of this, which is kind of interesting, but we're going to give you guys all the update. We have a video from the moment of the attack, or actually the moment that the armed police in Kent managed to successfully stop the knife attacker. As we said, there's a mainstream media blackout on the situation in Kent. There has been two newspapers that actually reported on this, their website. One of them I think was Metro, and of course the local paper in Kent. Otherwise, other than that, nobody's actually talking about that. We also have some breaking news, a follow-up update on what happened last night in Cambridgeshire with the train attack. There is an update which we're going to bring you guys in the next few minutes. Of course, we're going to get your reaction live on this channel. First, let's give you guys the update on what happened in Kent. Again, a 25-year-old man has now been arrested after being taken down by the armed police after he made threats with a knife in Faversham, Kent, which is in the southeast of England. It is understood that two knives were recovered at the scene by the police. So I believe that he was basically carrying one and obviously trying to hit the armed police with it. But then he also had another knife as well in his possession, which is not going to help his case, of course. The authorities are not giving us any information in terms of the identity apart from his age and his gender. There have been some eyewitnesses. We cannot verify this. There have been some eyewitnesses in the area said that might have heard him say Allahu Akbar or whatever. We can't confirm that yet. Wouldn't be surprised, but I'm going to talk about also Faversham as an area which is supposed to be a very quiet and peaceful market town, which has been changing in recent months. So let's show you the video of the moment that the armed police were chasing him down, and then we also have a statement from the Kent police. Let's go to the moment of the attack. Yes, I mean, all the stuff that's been happening over the weekend has been absolutely insane. So that's when he gave up then, and the police brought him down, and more backup obviously comes to support these two armed police officers. The statement we have from the Kent police, and there we go. I think there's a police car that's going to come in a minute. Faversham, by the way, is a very, very small place. It's not your typical major urban city sort of area. It's a quiet market town. This sort of stuff doesn't happen there. It is now, but it wasn't before. Now, obviously, because there hasn't been any mainstream media attention on this, all the attention is on what happened in Cambridgeshire on the train. We haven't really been able, we got in touch, 2CTV got in touch with the Kent police, but we're not really able to get any information in regards to the motive because they say that we can't really clarify whether this was a disruption, terror related or whatever. But we have a statement from the Kent police saying that it was reported that a man was making threats and was in possession of a knife. Officers attended and arrested a 25-year-old man on suspicion of attempted grievous bodily harm, or GBH, threats to kill, and possession of a knife. He was also arrested on suspicion of criminal damage relating to damage to a police vehicle. He remains in custody as inquiries in the incident continue. Now, I thought it's important to, obviously, as I'm still obviously catching up with everything that happened over the weekend, late last night, we missed the actual breaking news of what happened in Cambridge on the train, but we gave you guys the follow-up update a couple of hours ago. As we were catching up on everything else over the weekend, this becomes a big issue because when the rest of the mainstream media are focusing on one area, anything else that could happen elsewhere is being completely gone unreported. But it's important for people to find out what's happening. Now, of course, we are a global news channel. Whether you're watching this in Kent is important for you. Of course, this is your local area. Whether you're watching this from the UK in general, but even if you're watching from Europe or elsewhere in the West, this is the sort of stuff that's happening that's not being reported. This is about the fact that the media is not really paying attention, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Now, there's a reaction from the local councillor in Kent. This is Rob Crayford saying, I'm aware of police activity within St. Anne's Ward last night and the videos currently circulating on local Facebook groups. I want to thank Kent Police for their swift response and professional handling of the situation, which helped to keep our residents safe. So that's the local Labour councillor in Kent, which is a rare thing, of course, the Labour being in charge of areas in Kent, but that area is controlled by the Labour Party. Having said that, in terms of what's been going on in Faversham, as a very, very small, tiny town in Kent itself is peaceful, apart from the fact that, of course, illegal immigrants get to Dover, which is part of Kent. But the actual, as you get closer to London, it's supposed to be quiet, it's supposed to be peaceful, it's supposed to be green. Things have been changing over the last few months, definitely a few years, but even the last few months. Despite this quiet place, recently we had British patriots coming out to speak out against mass migration, against multiculturalism, against the rise of crime in the country. The Raise the Colours campaign, which is basically British patriots raising the flags of St. George's flags and the Union flag to be proud of their country, also took place there. These are the footage that you've seen from recent marches, again peaceful marches in the market town. Suddenly we are seeing also a rise of crime and random, apparently, as the media would call it, isolated incidents happening left, right and centre. But the video that we showed you is, we got lucky because I think it was the local florist, the flower shop, that actually managed to film that and posted that on Facebook. And of course, after that, the Kent police had to release a statement because they were like, oh, well, somebody actually filmed this. It's kind of out there on social media. We're trying not to get this out. We basically told the BBC and Sky News and GB News not to report on this, but people know this, especially local people. We're going to have to release a statement. That's why they had to do that. Now, we have some follow-up updates on what also happened in Cambridgeshire on the train since our previous live stream. There's a video from last night, which I'm going to show you. This is the moment one of the suspects was arrested. There we go. It shows the police going around and bringing down a man in black who shouted, "Kill me, kill me," after the mass stabbing that happened on the train. One officer yelled, "Get him in an effing hold," as it was a taser crackled and the suspect hit the ground. Police dog, multiple armed units, and a lot of shouting later. Of course, he was cuffed and arrested for attempted murder. They still refuse to call it a terror attack. But the breaking news that we now have and can confirm is that 2 people were arrested last night, as you remember. One of them was a 32-year-old black British man, as they call him, and the other one was a Caribbean descent, 35-year-old. The 35-year-old Caribbean man has now been released from custody. So we now only have one suspect. The man, the younger one, the British, well, they call him the black British man. Again, they just said black, so it could be any from anywhere. At least with the other one, they clarified Caribbean. And the other updates in terms of the well-being of those who have been injured is that a member of the LNER train company who was actually working, who saved people's lives by jumping in front of the attacker. Unfortunately, he remains in a life-threatening condition as he fights for his life. Now, we will have more information on the situation from Cambridgeshire, the train, because that's where the most of the focus is. There's a political pressure on the authorities to keep us up to date, but not much is happening in terms of getting more updates from Kent, which is of course slightly worrying. But this happens when the focus of the mainstream media and the mainstream political establishment goes into one topic, one tragedy, one attack. Other stuff that happens at the same time will not get enough traction. But of course, we are here to make sure that you get all the information from the major attacks to smaller attacks to everything that is being ignored by the mainstream. Now, Libel says in Germany, they now take them out for good. Yeah, they don't do that in this country. So they, even the armed police, they always tend to restrain themselves. And this is part of British policing. And it was known as a nice thing. It was known as a more civilized policing. But actually, in fact, it makes things difficult and dangerous. Because in any other country, if there is an attacker in possession of a knife or a gun or whatever, and trying to basically attack the police, they shoot him down, right? At that point, they try to warn him, saying stop, freeze. If not, then that's it. We had the situation in a Manchester airport about a year ago, if you remember, where the two Muslim brothers who were stupid but also brave enough to randomly start attacking, beating up armed police officers in an airport. They're like, how stupid do you have to be to do that? And the armed police, at that point, this could be a threat. They had every justification to just take them out. They didn't. They restrained themselves. And of course, because of the rules and regulations on armed police officers in the UK, they're not even able to use their hands or their arms because they're holding the gun. They might accidentally drop it. So they're just told to use your legs, your feet. So they kicked them. And then they got suspended for kicking the suspects. Like, what? It's a lose-lose situation if you're an armed police officer in this country. What is the point of it at this point? But again, last night, same thing, where the guy was attacking the police. He was attacking the police car. He's damaged a police vehicle, and they ended up still going towards him and taser him. Armed police. So, at this point, what is the point of having the armed police? If the UK doesn't take a stand against this, it will be a very sad sight for the world. A moment where the UK appears to have lost its resolve. Yeah, look, it was until now a symbolic thing. If the UK goes down, things will happen. But actually, it's now a literal thing. Physically speaking, Britain, because of its position in the world historically and even now until recently, Britain going down will have a massive domino effect on the rest of the Western world. You know, right now, because of our political leadership, Britain is not being taken seriously. We know that. Apart from the ridicule, we do know that other countries are looking at Britain. Countries like Canada, like Australia, South Africa, and ordinary people from those countries, if they see that Britain is going down, there's no hope. So, but it doesn't seem to be going too well for now. The only time these barbaric acts is acceptable when it suits an ideology, in my opinion. The thing is, there's a whole range of threats in the UK, in the West in general, when it comes to, well, let's just call them attackers, because it's not really always just Islam. We also have a lot of people from we've seen the militants from the Black Lives Matter movement, which kind of, it's gone down for a little bit. But for a few years ago, in America, in Britain, they were doing assassinations. They were literally going around killing people. They weren't Islamic. They were Black Lives Matter, but they were basically a bunch of militant Marxists, revolutionaries. And you know, you have threats from all angles right now hitting these countries, and the political side don't even know what they're doing, unless they know. Leslie says, what the F is going on in our country? It just, as the mayor of London, actually the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, who did say that about London a while ago, that, terrorist attacks, stabbings and stuff, that's just part of living in London. Get used to it. That's basically what he said, right? You can't really say that about Faversham. It's a small market town. Everybody knows everybody. Unless some newcomers coming or unless people from other places just go into the town to cause trouble. Angry PMC Viking says the government gaslighting us as normal. The thing is, it's not really just the government now, because it's also the media. The media and also the police, because it shouldn't be like this. But the way it works, when something happens, as the media would call it, incident, right? When an incident happens, normal situation, in a normal country, what should happen is that the police and the local authorities, regardless of how much attention there is on that story, they would release statements, they would keep you posted, they will be transparent, right? Simple. Even if they just have to tell their local newspapers, right? That's it. But the reality is, right now, in 2025, in countries like Britain, and there are many other countries in the West, if there is not enough attention on a story, the same so-called incident, the police and the local authorities don't feel any urgency to keep you posted. If you're right now living in Kent, living in Faversham or around Faversham, you're not going to get any updates. The only update we received was the statement that I read to you, only because the video from the attack, when the armed police chased that suspect and brought him down, has been circulating on Facebook, on social media. And the local councillors had to react to this because they were part of the Facebook groups, because the local residents were kicking off. That's the only reason that the police simply got in touch with the local papers, not even the mainstream national media, and told Kent newspapers, there we go, this is a statement, we've arrested the man, 25-year-old man, that's all we're going to tell you. We recovered 2 knives. That's it. And because if there's not going to be any more pressure from political leaders, from anybody in the mainstream media, anybody with a major platform, nationally speaking, they're not going to even give you a follow-up statement tomorrow, the next day, the next week. So the only way you can find out what's happening, the only way you can actually have transparency is if there is a major pressure. So if tomorrow a bunch of local people from Faversham stop protesting peacefully, just march about what happened, just to demand answers, yes, 2 days later you're going to get a statement from the police. Follow-up statement. Okay, now we can tell you this is the identity of the man, this was what the fight was about, this was the motive. The only way you could do that, because don't wait for political leaders from mainstream parties to demand this. Don't expect, Keir Starmer or Kemi Badenoch or Nigel Farage to make a big story about it. Everyone's focused on what happened on the train, which, by the way, is also a huge tragedy. I'm not saying forget about the major attack that happened also last night on a train. No, you can multitask. Political leaders can multitask. Demand answers on what happened on the train in Cambridgeshire, but also find out what happened in Kent. There are normal local people who thought that they live in a safe and peaceful town. Now they're going to be scared to even leave their houses. These are important things. If an armed police unit is involved in a so-called incident, it's important. It's not just a random police support officer just chasing down some sort of shoplifter. Yeah, fine, that's not a national story. That happens all the time. Or if there was a fight between 2 people, someone just decided to stab someone. Yeah, that happens regularly. That happens weekly. But when an armed police unit is getting involved with something major like this, yes, that requires national attention. But if they're not going to put any attention, it's the job of the local people to get out there, start protesting outside the police station to find out answers. It's the only way. King Trump about to annihilate the Nigerian government. Yes, we are getting some updates from the White House. The rhetoric from the White House is escalating against the Nigerian Islamists in defense, of course, of the Christians who are getting massacred. As we get closer to Christmas, by the way, unfortunately, expect more genocide in Nigeria. That happens every year. I mean, it's happening regularly, but Christmas time specifically in Nigeria, is a tough time for Christians. Jeff says Islam is pure evil. And Libel says, Mr. Tusi, I grew up in a Europe where all border guards were armed. And believe you me, they weren't afraid to use them. Chances are that criminals are armed. But the armed police should still do their job, or should be told to do their job. They want to do it, but they're not allowed to in the UK. Taylor said they're still doing a great job despite these restrictions on them. Taylor says, Taylor family, UK citizens change in legislation for carry and conceal over the age of 35. Yeah, you're talking common sense, but you're not going to expect, you can't expect that from the government or any party, and no party is going to advocate for that. Mainstream, at least. Kendra says the government and the police bank on us focusing if it's illegal immigrant or not. After decades of immigration, the only question to ask is, what ideology do they follow? The thing is, again, as I say, even at times it's not Islam. What we do know is that anything that happens in the name of multiculturalism is based on people who hate Britain and who hate British values. Now, there are people from migrant families, second generation, third generation, especially from the Commonwealth, lovely people from the Commonwealth, but those also from cultures that were more compatible, and they worked hard because they came in smaller numbers back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and their families obviously integrated. They are also kicking off. They, of course, are kicking off. I mean, these are the people who go to United Kingdom rallies, Tommy Robinson's rallies, because enough is enough. You are now bringing in people that are not even compatible. They don't want to be compatible. It's not even just about Islam. When you're bringing in lower cultural classes from the third world that don't actually care about British values. They just see this place as just not even a land of opportunity, like what we call America as a land of opportunity. They're a land of opportunity to take from us, not to give, but take and take and take. Now, I was in a taxi yesterday and I was talking to a taxi driver, and he said he met someone who knew an illegal immigrant from Sudan. This man sold his father's farm in Sudan, got himself to Libya with another friend. In Libya, it's basically it's a messed up place. That friend was kidnapped, was killed. This one, the Sudanese guy, continued the journey, got himself to Europe, got to France, got a dinghy from France, Calais, got to England, right? His asylum case was accepted. He now stayed in the UK. Then, recently, apparently, the same man from Sudan said he wanted to go back to Sudan because Britain is too expensive. And then he couldn't go back to Sudan. He couldn't even self-deport himself because Sudan said, you're now a traitor because you've sought asylum in a different place, right? You decided to seek asylum. And the British government said, we can't deport you. That makes no sense. He wanted to do self-deportation. That's just one example. Complete mess. But the fact that people are like, did you go through all this journey? And then he said, oh, Britain is too expensive. He took enough. Now he can't take anymore. He doesn't want to work. Too expensive to be on universal credits, the benefit system we have in this country. No mainstream media report on a police van set on fire by a man holding Quran in Leeds. Footage shows him standing on a roof saying Allahu Akbar. Outrageous. There's been so much happening this weekend, by the way. Yeah, they don't care. Elegant Rebel says to government, people's objections are just words. Actually, people's objections to the government is a threat to the government. It's not just words. It's just, literally, they see it as you're the enemy if you object. Ricky Gervais' tube ad for stabbing got rejected. Yeah, I know, I heard. Yeah, he's a national hero for a liberal. Libel says attacks will rise with Christmas here now. Watch out. Yeah, the thing is, if you think Britain is bad, unfortunately, as we get closer to Christmas, if you live in Germany, France, or Sweden, unfortunately, you should expect major attacks unless the security forces do their job, the intelligence, to prevent it, Christmas time is always a tough time and more attacks happen. I wonder why, right? They hate us, that's why. Jason says, yesterday US just stopped the ISIS attack in Dearborn. Yeah, that was 3 days ago, 4 days ago. But yeah, that was in Michigan. It's kicking off everywhere. Anyway, so I'm trying to get more updates on the situation with the train because, as we said, the confirmation is that one of the suspects has now been released. Okay, we now have a statement. All right, this is the up-to-date statement. Detectives investigating multiple stabbings on a train in Cambridgeshire can this evening confirm a 32-year-old man who was arrested is now being treated as the only suspect. A 35-year-old man from London, that was the Caribbean man, who was also arrested at the scene, has been released with no further action. It was reported in good faith to officers responding to the incident that he was involved in the attack, and following inquiries we can confirm that he was not involved. What a mess, right? The 32-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder and remains in police custody. He is from Peterborough, and it is known that he boarded the train at Peterborough Station, which is in Lincolnshire. 5 casualties have now been discharged from the hospital and 1 remains in a life-threatening condition. That's the LNER guy. This casualty is a member of the LNER rail staff who was on the train at the time and tried to stop the attacker. Detectives have reviewed the CCTV from the train and it is clear his actions were nothing short of heroic and undoubtedly saved many people's lives. Unfortunately, he might actually not make it, but he did save a lot of lives. Now, the Deputy Chief Constable, Stuart Cundy, has now said, our investigation is moving at pace and we are confident we are not looking for anyone else in connection to the incident. As would be expected, specialist detectives are looking into the background of the suspect that we have in custody and the events that led up to the attack. This was a horrific attack that has had a wide impact. My thoughts and those of everyone in the British Transport Police are with those injured and their families, especially the brave staff, member of staff of the rail company. Anyway, then they're saying if you have any information, get in touch with the British Transport Police. It's insanity. All right, what's going on with the... Yeah, okay, Dave says this won't be called a terrorist attack either. Yeah, probably not. Pretty sure it won't. Michelle says, well, another random, isolated, shocking incident. What a coincidence. Yeah, apparently everything's shocking according to the Prime Minister. They're always shocked. All the time. Thank you, Mark. Peter says, Europe now a no-fly zone for Santa and Rudolph. Yeah. Dark humor is the only thing we have left at this point, yeah. Margaret says, I'm so glad that where I live, there are none of these people near. Yeah. Anyway, there's a lot to cover on this, but we are going to continue this conversation on 2CTV Plus, so we could have it more uncensored, unfiltered. If you want to join 2CTV Plus, make sure to download the 2CTV app, or you can also scan the QR code or go on 2c.tv. If you use the promo code YT10, you will get 10% off annual memberships. You get access to our documentaries, our podcasts, our interviews, original series, and the chat forum that we have. We're going to be on the chat forum in the next few minutes. If you want to join us, go on our private Discord after becoming a member and go on post live chat. You can see it on this post live chat, and we will continue this conversation with the lovely members of 2CTV Plus. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maya 2C, and we are the media.